Night had fallen slowly on the ground. In the midst of the endless darkness, the only sound that could be heard was the breath of the earth. And in the heart of this silence, the sound of thunder arose. The sky screamed, the mountains trembled, and man, trembling and astonished, raised his head. For the first time, he looked into the sky. That night, for him, it was not just rain. The bright light that split the sky was a sign of something he did not understand. He did not know what lightning was, but he felt that there was a force from the world above that was watching over him. And that feeling planted the first seed of faith in the mind of man. Every time the thunder roared, something trembled inside him. He wanted to know, is the sky angry? Is this voice the voice of a spirit that wants to speak to him? In the midst of these questions, man thought for the first time about something unseen, about a hidden power, about a force greater than himself. And this was the beginning of the path that would later be known as faith. Over the years, early humans listened to the sky, to the sound of the wind, to the howling of the storm, to the roar of lightning, and every sound had a meaning. When the sky was calm, they considered it a sign of grace, and when it roared, it meant that the spirits were angry. They did not know what to call the gods, but they felt their presence in everything, in the rain that fell, in the snow that whitened the mountains, in the light that the sun scattered. The world was alive for them. Every stone, every river, every tree had a soul, and man, to survive, had to be at peace with those souls. In the tribes, the first sounds of prayer arose, not with words, not with language, with groans and cries. They would face the sky, raise their hands, and wish for something in their hearts that they didn't know what. Those prayers may have been nothing more than a simple request for rain, but behind them lay a deeper desire, a desire to know who was sitting up there. One day, in the midst of a storm, one of the elders of the tribe pointed to the sky and said, "He sees us." The others looked at him, frightened but eager. And from that night on, a new word was formed among them, a word for what could not be seen: God. From then on, every natural phenomenon was a message to them. A sunrise meant hope. A storm meant anger. A successful hunt meant the satisfaction of the spirits. And death meant returning to somewhere in the sky. But in the dead of night, when the fire died out, and only the light of the stars remained, the first man felt something even stranger, a sense of connection. It was as if there was a hidden bridge between himself and those bright spots in the sky. He didn't know what a star was, but deep down he knew that somewhere up there the answers to his questions lay. Sometimes in the wind, he heard a voice that he thought came from the sky. Sometimes a shadow fell on the ground, and he thought the gods were passing by him. And every time thunder rolled in the mountains, he felt in his heart that the world was speaking to him. In those days, man trembled with every cry of nature, but in that very fear, a spark of spirituality was formed. He was no longer just looking for survival. He was looking for a relationship with an invisible force that resides in the sky. And perhaps at that moment, when he looked up at the sky for the first time and said, "He," the spiritual world of man was born. From then on, Earth was no longer his only home. The sky became his second home. And man remained lost between the two, feet on the ground, but eyes on the sky. Days passed, and the first man no longer looked only at fear. He began to name the forces that were not seen. The wind, the rain, the sun, the thunder, even the animals he hunted, all found a face in his mind. In the heart of the mountains, in the midst of the noisy forests, man felt that every phenomenon had a spirit. The wind that shook the leaves was perhaps a messenger of anger. The sun that shone was perhaps the guardian of life. And the lightning reminded him that there was a power beyond him, a power that could neither be touched nor forgotten. He began to visualize them. He shaped stones, carved wood, painted his body with clay and paint and charcoal. Every shape, every symbol was something to connect with something beyond his visible world. And from these images, the first gods and nature spirits were born. In the tribes, elders taught and told stories. Stories about the sun, the moon, the wind, the rain, and the hunt. Stories that intertwined reality and fantasy, introducing the child's mind to the invisible world from the very beginning. Each story was a bridge between man and a force he could not see, but felt. The shapes and patterns in the caves had strange faces. Animals with human features, humans with animal features, shadows that came to life in the flames of fire. And these were not just images. Each drawing was a warning, a lesson, or even a prayer for protection. Man understood for the first time that he could ask these forces for something. Not just survival, but dominion and harmony. If you worshipped fire, perhaps it would give you warmth and light. If you respected the river, perhaps you would get better hunting. This respect and fear led to the formation of rituals, dances, whispers, signs, sacrifices. Each was an attempt to communicate with the invisible world, with the primal gods. Sometimes man would sit alone in a cave, listening to the sound of the wind and imagining one of these gods. Sometimes a shadow would fall on the wall and he would see the gods talking to him. And every time night came, the fire would be rekindled and invisible faces would dance on the cave wall. Over the generations, these faces became fixed in the collective mind of the tribe. Rain was no longer just rain, the sun was no longer just a star, and hunting was no longer just hunting. Everything had a meaning beyond itself. Man understood that the world was not just matter and substance. The world is full of invisible and undiscovered forces, and humans are the only creatures who can communicate with them. And perhaps the most interesting discovery was that these gods and spirits were not only there to protect, but to guide the human mind. They taught man to think, to visualize, to predict, and even to make up stories. Stories that were later passed down through the generations and shaped culture. With these images and rituals, man gradually discovered order and law. What is right and what is wrong? What pleases the powers and what angers them? And at the same time, the belief was formed. The world is full of beings who can see, hear, and even respond to man. And man understood for the first time that he could negotiate with the invisible world, make sacrifices, and pray. And this was the beginning of the concept of religion and myths. The sky was no longer just the sky. The sun, the moon, the stars, the thunder, and the wind, all were gods who shaped the human mind with their gaze, with fear, and with reverence. And this formed mind is what later gave the world the gift of civilization and culture.
Night came, and the sky became a sea of small lights. The stars shone in silence, and the first men stared at them. The sun and the moon no longer meant anything to him. Now thousands of eyes shone in the sky, and the human mind tried to extract from those lights some great message. For the first time, he realized that the world was wider than mountains, forests, and rivers. And this realization took him beyond the earth. He could no longer touch everything with his senses. A higher power, an invisible power, something beyond him, was present everywhere. Man began to name and picture them. The stars, the sun, the moon. Each became a god who ruled the world. The sun, the guardian of the day. The moon, the refuge of the night. The stars, the guides of travel and hunting. And a greater force, hidden in all these lights, the creator and maker of the universe. From these gazes, the first star and sky worship took shape. Man learned to read the paths of the stars, predict the seasons, and measure time. He understood that the world has order, and perhaps this order is the hand of God. By the cave fire, the tribal elder taught the children. These lights are the eyes of the sky fathers. They see us and guide us. And these words laid the foundation for the first divine beliefs. For the first time, early man thought not only of a terrifying God, but of a being who could be a friend and guide. He prayed, offered sacrifices, performed rituals, but now with a new understanding. The world is not just a fear, it is a teacher and a guide. Gradually, rituals took shape, and traditions took shape. Dances to the sun, prayers for rain, worship of the stars for protection and guidance. Man could no longer live without this connection. Every action, every hunt, every movement on earth became somehow connected to the heavenly gods. With this gaze, man for the first time drew a picture of the world from his mind. Not just what he saw, but what he felt and believed. The stars, the sun, the moon, the wind, the thunder, and the forces of nature all were given faces and names. This incredible creative mind became the foundation of civilization and spiritual culture in the human mind. Man understood that life was not just about survival. He could create meaning, order, and purpose. And this discovery ignited the spark of spiritual civilization, early astronomy, and philosophy in the human mind. At the end of the night, when the fire had died down and only the light of the stars remained, the first man looked to the horizon. Eye to eye, with 1,000 shining eyes, with a look full of wonder and fear, but also hope and faith. For the first time, he said to himself, "The world is big, and I am a part of it, and everything I do is seen in the heart of these lights." And from that moment on, man was no longer the only creature of the earth. He became the child of heaven and earth. And that same creative mind and searching spirit illuminated the path of civilization, religion, and knowledge for thousands of generations to come. We are still on that path, among the ashes of fires and the light of stars, in search of the same gods who first looked up at the sky.